Welcome to Dark Speak, where secrets never sleep, and the darkness always has something to say. Bloodspell Snake Shadow, the war of breaking the seal and seizing fate. The lower reaches of the Blackwater River have long been whispering about a mysterious spell that can manipulate the fate of buying and selling. It can make a house, a boat, or any item sold immediately as if compelled by an invisible force, or on the contrary, sealed so tightly that no one dares to approach. This evil magic originates from ancient spells of the magician trading world called my dying, meaning to sell. In ancient language, my dying means to sell land, my gia means to sell a house, my means to sell a wife. Just by changing the words, even boats or any other objects can be cursed. The person most proficient in this magic in the area is the old monk Tin Kwong, who lives in seclusion in the Exe on temple nestled in the bamboo forest along the river. He has witnessed many life changes and has also seen many families destroyed by this evil spell. Tin Kwong once said that those who use spells are often greedy for profit, wanting to quickly exchange for money, while those who use curses harbor hatred or harbor evil plots. When the spell is properly cast, buyers will come to them as if hypnotized. On the contrary, when the curse is suppressed, all transactions immediately become paralyzed as if locked with invisible chains. Once, he told about an old house at Ha Duong Wharf. The owner had been selling it for a long time, but no one dared to ask to buy it. At night, the entire house shook as if there was an earthquake. The walls creaked, and the furniture moved by itself even though the wind was calm. The most terrifying thing was that at the hour of Tai, the whole family could clearly hear something crawling up and down between the two main pillars, slimy, heavy chunks of flesh crawling as if they were lurking. Anyone who witnessed it for a night or two would run away and disappear. Not only houses, but also boats have been cursed. Once cursed, even if the driver is experienced, the boat will still crash into tree roots, bridge pillars, or reefs. The magical force pulling the rudder is so strong that it cannot be resisted. The ancient carpentry boat builders were well versed in the Luban method, so from the moment the first wooden bar was assembled or the boat was launched, they secretly cast a spell. Once, a rich man in Nok Tram village hired a group of the best workers to build a large tiled house. On the day it was completed, the owner walked in and looked at it, praising it, then held a grand party inviting the whole village, killing a pig to treat the workers. But at that very moment, the curse took shape. People believe that when the homeowner blurts out his satisfaction, if the workers have evil intentions, they will use that thought to cast a curse. Once the curse is put in place, the homeowner will find it difficult to avoid bankruptcy. Some people even secretly carve an image of two people holding a bucket and continuously bailing water, implying that their fortune will be drained. Tin Kwong once received a case of a vicious blood spell. Following the evil spirit, he found the old banyan tree where the blood seal was buried, an earthen jar containing a dried snake tongue, the victim's hair, and a piece of blood-stained cloth. He used the blood shadow snake technique, using the snake bone whip to break the seal, causing resentment to dissipate into light red mist and disappear into nothingness. Stories like this are told as a warning. Not always is a success or failure in business due to fate. Sometimes there's a mysterious hand pulling the strings of human destiny, and only magicians like Tin Kwong have the power to cut them. One case in Nok Tram still makes him remember forever. That day, the homeowner was about to finish the big house and held a pig slaughter party to treat the workers. Tin Kwong was sure that this man would meet with disaster, because showy people often break the spell. But the story took a turn. The three workers originally intended to cast a deadly spell on the main beam because they heard that the homeowner was stingy. In fact, during the construction period, he often told his wife to salt meat in jars for the workers to eat gradually, and the leftovers from the feast were sent back to their families. But malicious rumors made them resentful. That night, when climbing up the roof, two of the group suddenly hesitated, realizing the master's heart. They gave up their intention, but the talisman that had been written fell to ground like two birds tearing through the wind, taking the disaster on the owner's behalf. The resentment dissipated. People called this virtue overcoming fate, when virtue is strong enough to dispel evil magic. But not everyone was like that. Old Jingguang explained that many ancient craftsmen who were taught by the Luban sect or the Dharma carpentry lineage believed that they had to curse to keep their profession. When their hearts were evil, they turned it into a weapon to harm others. Some cursed the graves of their enemies' ancestors, cutting off the spiritual connection between their descendants and grandparents, causing the family to collapse. Sometimes it was just a fit of anger, a hired word from an evil person. The cursed object can be just a pair of chopsticks stuck into a grave, but when combined with poisonous spell, the destructive power is immeasurable. In the past, there was also a spell to curse thieves. With just a used kitchen chopstick, along with a few evil-attracting objects, the practitioner could cause a thief to die suddenly as soon as he entered, his whole body convulsing as if his bones had been pulled out. Tin Kwang often said that magic has two sides, saving people and harming people. For people with bright minds, magic is a shield. For evil people, magic is a cold-blooded knife. Of all, the blood spell snake shadow is still the most terrifying because it not only destroys the body but also suffocates the soul, turning human life into a dark abyss. I still remember that day. Late afternoon, the red sunlight penetrated the canopy, pouring down on the ground like blood. Old Tin Kwang told the story while smoking. The smoke curled into hazy rings, wrapping around the story like a ghostly mist. He said that after that incident, the soldiers, although big and strong, and his eyes were no different from young birds without feathers. In the forest, muscle strength was nothing compared to the one who wielded the magic spell. Wherever they went, they would secretly look back, afraid that the shadow beside them was not their own. That was one time when Tin Kwang and his unit were marching through the northern border area of Baihak Lam. The whole team decided to stop for the night in an abandoned house near the edge of the forest. The wind blew in from cracks in the wall, carrying a musty smell mixed with an indescribable sweet fishy smell, like old blood that had seeped deep into rotten wood. At night, when everyone had fallen asleep, Tin Kwang suddenly heard clearly the sound of digging right underground where he lay. The rustling sound of the shovel blade rubbing against the gravel suddenly stopped when it hit something hard, making a dry clacking sound, and then stopped. He still lay still, pretending to sleep, but his hand had gently placed itself on the X-A on blood seal leaf that was carefully wrapped in his shirt pocket. The next morning, as if on cue, the ground where he lay was turned upside down, revealing fresh digging marks. If it weren't for the talisman protecting him, he would have been dragged down into an unknown deep hole by now. The faces of the two young soldiers in the team were pale. One of them tremblingly recounted that last night he saw a human figure wriggling on the ground like a giant snake, slithering between his legs before disappearing. Jingguang only slightly curled his lips. On the battlefield, ghosts and humans were sometimes not much different. The only difference was that ghosts did not need to eat, while humans were willing to kill their own kind to live. But the horror did not stop there. A few days later, when the group stopped at a large American military warehouse, Jingguang saw with his own eyes a talisman he called the blood seal lock, a type of talisman that both kept things safe and suppressed life. The key to the warehouse was cast from a strange alloy, as big as a fist, but to open it, one could not just insert into the lock. One had to recite an incantation in ancient language, recite a secret series of numbers, and then use the pointed end of a small golden Buddha, statue the size of a little finger, to poke into the hidden hole in the lock. If one made even the slightest mistake, the mechanism would lock itself, and the person who opened it would bleed to death. Jingguang saw with his own eyes a huge American soldier try and crack the lock. In less than a few breaths, blood oozed from his nose, ears, and eyes, staining the ground red. He only had time to pull a few times and then lay motionless while the lock stood there coldly, as if nothing had happened. The old man took a deep breath of his cigarette. His eyes narrowed under the hazy smoke. Then he said softly, "In life, if you put your hands into blood charms, you either live as long as a snake or die without a last word." When it was getting dark, in a rotten wooden hut on the edge of Nam Lin Forest, Tin Kwang sat by the fire, looking at the two young men standing in front of him. Both were strong and sturdy, but their faces were still young, and their eyes were filled with fear. The old man said in a low voice, "It's not difficult to get people out of the operation area. Just wait for the order to stop. When the base allows a withdrawal, I will personally take him back to his place. When you go to Nam Lin Street, I will dress him in civilian clothes, put him on a bus, and go straight home. In these times, keeping people who are not on the same side only invites trouble. Sometimes they even get killed. He called out to the kitchen to tell his wife to cook dinner for the 2 new soldiers. Tin Quang was famous for his love for soldiers, and no one in the surrounding units did not know. The soldiers respected him, and his wives also respected him because he kept a principle throughout his life. He never disgraced the good girls. He looked straight into the eyes of the 2 young men, his voice as heavy as stone. In life, the greatest sin is to destroy someone else's home. I have seen many people die tragically because of that karma. Taking another drag of his cigarette, he continued. In the past, in the Shaolin area, there were many skilled witch doctors. Just buy a bottle of Harmony oil, apply a few times, and the person you target will fall in love. But most of them are now dead. The rest are also in ruins. No matter what karma you sow, sooner or later you will get sick. Your family will be ruined. He told about the time he was stationed at the Tam Sa fishing port, next to the old prison camp. The soldiers there witnessed many strange things, including the case of cursing graves by using a large chopstick to stick into the middle of the grave, trapping the soul of the dead in the ground and not allowing it to be released. One gloomy night, an old woman went to pick water hyacinths along the bank of the pond, slipped and suffocated because the flowers wrapped tightly around her neck. Her body was buried on the deserted canal bank. That night, when Tin Quang passed by, a blue flame rose from the grave, hovered around the old man's head, and then suddenly went out. Angry, he took a shovel to dig up the skull and smashed it to warn her. But from that day on, her spirit continuously appeared as a ghost. She slipped and fell when running on the bank, and slipped when going to the river. One stormy day, lightning struck her grave, and the ground exploded like a bomb crater. People said that was when she turned into a ghost and was punished by heaven. The old man fell silent, his eyes staring into the darkness as if piercing through a thick layer of fog. Outside, the rain poured down, thunder and lightning exploded in succession, light tearing the gray space apart. In the distant fields, amidst the white rain, a loud explosion rang out. Lightning struck the middle of the field. White smoke billowed up. The rice planters ran away in panic, while I rushed out into the mud and water, hugging the body that had just been thrown, dragging it to the canal bank. That day, the wind from the Linyin Mountains blew down fiercely. The sky was murky as if someone had plastered it with a thick layer of gray mud. I ran to the hut on the edge of the forest, where a man named Xie Rong was lying motionless after a direct lightning strike. His body was still warm, but his empty eyes seemed to have seen through the living world. His lips were tightly closed until they were purple. I didn't think long. Immediately caught a black Muscovy duck, dipped it in rainwater, scraped off the remaining feathers, then put the whole thing in a stone mortar and pounded it with finely ground mung beans. I applied that pungent mixture directly to Ta Dung's chest. My village believed that raw Muscovy duck meat would absorb all the negative energy from the lightning strike, but no one knew what ultimately extracted the soul, resentment, or something deeper. That time, Ta Dung woke up after a few hours, but fate did not let him go. Within a month, lightning struck him twice more. 3 times. The lightning came to the same human life, as if it had engraved his name on the punishment board of heaven. I thought that was the most terrifying thing, but then I witnessed something even more haunting. It was Luong Nak Han, the granddaughter-in-law of an old friend, a gentle girl who loved her husband very much. That afternoon, the rain poured down as if tearing the sky apart. The water rose to her knees, and thunder and lightning continued. Han was still driving the tractor with her father in the middle of Dong Fong Field, despite the explosions ringing in her ears. I ran across, trying to shout loudly in the rain, "Go home, the sky is angry." But she just shook her head, saying that she had a few more laps to go. Before she could finish, a streak of white lightning tore across the rainy night. The light seemed to stab straight into my eyes. The next explosion resounded loudly, shaking the ground. Han collapsed, her body convulsing like a crushed leaf. The father screamed, holding his child on the cold mud floor. I rushed over, lifted her up, and ran straight home, despite the rain stinging my face. But the cruel fate did not stop. When the wooden coffin was placed in the middle of the tiled roof house, another storm came. A bolt of lightning from the sky struck straight down on the roof, tearing off each tile, passing to the wooden pillars, exploding the ground, and then hitting the coffin. The family panicked, quickly moving the grave to the cemetery near the church in the hope that the sky would spare them. But one stormy night, not long after, thunder rumbled throughout the area. A column of white fire tore across the cemetery, hitting Han's grave. Rocks and dirt flew up like an explosion. The coffin was thrown over the cement fence, into the middle of the rice field, and shattered. When found, only pieces of charred wood, and remains remained mixed with cold mud. 3 times lightning struck a human life. No one knew if it was a coincidence or a sentence from the deep underworld. From that day on, whispers appeared in the village that no one dared to speak out loud. Some said it was a karma of their ancestors. Others believed that in their bodies there was an evil spirit that heaven could not tolerate. Ancient methods, such as using live ducks, green beans, or spells, were all ineffective. Until now, the question remains unanswered. Was it a terrible coincidence of nature or the invisible hand of the underworld? Every time a storm came, the villagers would huddle at the door and look out at the old cemetery, where that grave once existed. And in the sound of the wind passing through cracks and planks, everyone could hear a breath close to their ears, reminding them that the thunder had never really left. The story revolves around mysterious deaths caused by lightning striking the same person repeatedly, even when they were already in a coffin or buried in a grave. The narrator witnesses and participates in folk remedies, such as using raw Muscovy duck meat and green beans to absorb negative energy, but all are powerless against fate. The most notable case is a filial young woman who loved her husband very much, was struck by lightning in the middle of the field, then struck by lightning twice more, once while she was still in a coffin in the middle of the house, and once while she was buried in the cemetery. Each strike was so devastating that the grave was blown away, and the remains were scattered all over the field. The villagers whispered all kinds of rumors, from karma, retribution, to resentment that had not yet dissipated. But whatever the reason, the thunder god seems determined not to let go of those with such special karma. The story ends here. See you in the next video. Goodbye.